Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and thank you for joining to Neo4j Live Social Science Meets Knowledge Graphs. I'm super happy to have a fantastic duo joining me today of my dear colleague Allison and her husband Trygve. Sorry, I stumbled across your name just there. You're muted. I think I cannot hear you yet. Listen, I think I could hear you laugh, so I think that's
Can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you. Yes, that's good. That's good. I can now.
Excellent.
At
Alrighty.
least we have 50%. So yeah, this should be well. Maybe you need to change if you click on the little settings button and in audio, maybe the wrong microphone was selected there. By default, it sometimes picks something weird for a
Yeah.
reason or another. But yeah,
Goes.
I'm looking forward to this. It should be very fun, very interesting today's session. So if you are in the social sciences, I think you will learn a lot. You see probably yourself in some of these discoveries today, and it's going to be a bit different. Usually, I'll be the one that asks the stupid questions. Today, I'm going probably off camera most of the time, and the two of you will have more like a discussion and a dialogue across discoveries and how to do it and how to solve things. So different, but still publicly encouraged everybody to ask questions, to be part of it, to be a part of the chat. Enjoy it, and towards the end, I'll be back in again, of course, to read out your questions and to have my own questions probably, and to discuss a little bit if we have the time.
All right. So I will be. I've heard the run through of this, so I'm happy
But
to help out
maybe
with
let's do
that.
one thing before we get going. Actually, maybe you
Yeah.
say a few words about who you are and what you do.
Oh,
Uh,
yes. What do I do? I'm
and
so worried about introducing the research. I forgot about
yeah,
myself. So yes, my name is Allison Cossette. I am a developer advocate here at Neo4j. I am a longtime data scientist, longtime lover of graph, and yeah, so my role at Neo4j is to go out and support folks in the community in taking on graph as a new way of looking at things and a new way of moving forward. So when Trygve being a longtime researcher, as this project came up, it was really fun for me to watch because this is what I do all day. And so to see social scientists actually being able to leverage this technology and come up with new insights, I thought was super exciting. So that's who I am. Trygve is the head of research at explainit.ai, which is a small AI consultancy. And most of his work right now in research is around public policy and in government. And so, that's the research that he's working on right now, which is what we're going to be presenting today.
cool.
Excellent. So Trygve, who is with us but is not on screen at this particular moment, is the head of research at explainit.ai. His academic background is in public policy, all the way back to graduate school, and so he's always had this deep interest in where the policy has come from and how it works. And the topic that he's working on right now is around special education in the state of Vermont. Our youngest son has autism, and as we were trying to go through that process and understand how do you navigate, where do you get services, what we found was that navigating the knowledge that's available was really challenging. And so we finally got to the point where we were able to get him the services he needed and we could get through it. But what really came interesting to Trygve was there's a particular type of funding and methodology around how special education services are provided in the state of Vermont. And what he really wanted to know is he wanted to understand, like, how did this even come to pass? Right? How is it that this was the final outcome? And so being the researcher, he's like, let me dive in and see what that might look like, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, what he really wanted to know was, so this is our origin story. All good stories have one. Ours is about this transition and discovery, and about how he went from being a concerned parent to a policy advocate. And we'll take you through something that we call the Nash wall, from the Nash wall to knowledge graphs. We'll tell you what that means in just a second. It's coming. It's really coming. So ultimately, he's back. Do we have volume?
No.
We do not.
Gosh,
Oh,
no.
the laptop is failing us today. Well, hopefully, Trygve, I can do you the best service. You can also feel free. Is there a way that we can have him chat directly with everyone?
You can chat in the right hand side. There's this chat window. You can type in things there.
Okay, great.
Try maybe changing. If you have a headset, maybe plug that in, or change the way you are used.
Oh, that could be
Yeah,
good.
maybe then
Yeah.
it
Try connecting some earbuds or
yeah,
something.
it gives you maybe
Excellent.
another way of getting sound in, and then
Yeah.
changing that.
Yeah, so ultimately what he wanted to be able to do is his question is, how do we understand points of influence in policy formation? Oftentimes, from the public perspective, there's a policy that's been put into place or a law that's been put into place, and it's not always really clear, well, what were the decisions that came to that? And this applies obviously even for us in commercial settings, right? Like, how did we get to that decision?
Yeah.
What other ideas were on the table? Which ideas were pruned? Which ones went forward? And so in this case, what he was trying to see is like, what are the points of influence in getting to this final policy that we have, right? So again, being a traditional researcher, usually how you would do that from a social science perspective is you go out and you study. So if we're trying to understand a policy, you look at the foundation documents, you look at maybe different historical precedents, different items that were cited in creating that policy. So there's a number of different ways that you as a human researcher, you go and you get all that knowledge into your own brain, right? From there, after you do all the reading, there we go, you start taking notes and you start putting it together. Our house, honestly, we're very Post-it friendly at our house. We do a lot of design thinking at our house. So it is not uncommon on the walls behind where Trygve is sitting right now. I think you probably see some of them. To take notes and put them together. And so as we're thinking, we're physical thinkers in our home. And so it's not uncommon as we're working on something for it to start looking something like this. Yeah. Right. So as a social scientist, you use your own cognition to go through, do the research, take the Post-its, put it together, and start to map out how did we go from the request for proposal from the committee from the Department of Education to what we have now. And so normally social scientists would have to go through this process. And whether it's with Post-it specifically, like very analog, or whether it's a Notion page or any other of a variety of ways that we in the modern era manage volumes of information, it still is requiring this human cognition to understand. And that's great, but it's going to have its limitations when things start opening up. So, and Trygve actually has like a very detailed conversation about this, and hopefully we'll hear from him about. But with open government and open data, we, over the last, 20, 30, 40 years, we had more and more access and transparency to how the government is functioning, having access to documents, having access to meeting transcripts or agenda items. So now for social scientists, they're in this position where they have access to these massive amounts of data, but have been trained in these ways of using the human to understand it. And so the question then becomes, what does that mean as a social scientist when we're looking at policy? So in this case, where we were looking and saying, okay, I've got this cognition, we're working on these little pieces. Can we hear you now?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. I'm here. I was just saying,
so
like, this
fun just watching you talk about it, Al. I feel guilty about interrupting now.
No, I'm happy to hand it over because I was just saying this slide in particular, I think you have a Watergate reference or something. So I will hand it back over to you at this point. So welcome, Trygve. We're happy to have you.
Thank you very much for having me, everyone. Sorry for the technology. If anything, I try to embrace technology wherever possible. It doesn't always work in my behalf, but I must say my experience with knowledge graphs are far more productive than my interface with communication technology. So, just as kind of a little heads up, I am, I'm the head of research at explainit.ai, and this is kind of a passion project for Al and I. She may have referenced that as context for our conversation, we're going to look into what Act 173 is and some of its influences on public policy. And I think it's good that we kind of fast forward to the open government data slide, just because in the 70s there was, in a reaction to Watergate and the Pentagon Papers, there was this movement to open up access to either secrets, proprietary data. There were impulses for government to share and bring transparency to all their documentation. So, what has happened since the 70s forward is that governments and state governments, and in particular the state of Vermont, been throwing lots and lots and lots of data and content and knowledge up on the web. And it's there. It is just not easy to find. And so I think one of the challenges we want to talk about is, you have, in the transition from analog to digital artifacts, you have this profundity of data. You have an overwhelming input into data. So whereas before you were kind of limited by what you can find in the library or what you can find, well, if you are a fan of Postit notes or Notion or wiki pages, you find that it can be overwhelming. And so you have to make some big decisions like, how do I deal with scale? How do I deal with scope? Does it have an impact on the questions I ask? Does it have an impact on the outputs I'm looking for? And so one of the aha moments I had, or that Al and I have had, was that you can move from the wall. We call it in our dining room. If I was on my other computer, you would see on our wall, we have that John Nash wall. If you ever saw A Beautiful Mind, you saw that he would always put some Post-it notes or index cards, or if you use a Notion or if you use Wikipedia, you have all these instruments that you use to capture all your data. Well, an aha moment for me, one of the many in this process, was that there is a better optimized way in which you can now start capturing all your content, all your data, all that knowledge and that information. And this is part of what bridging the gap is for us, to go from analog to digital, to go from your John Nash wall to a knowledge graph. Al, you're okay? So data collection still the same. For me, it's one of the joys of being a social researcher. I love going down rabbit holes because I have the eternal belief that I'm going to find Wonderland, and it doesn't always work out that way. But still, data collection now is in many ways easier. It's all digital artifacts, but you'll find that these large legislative policy bodies have committees, they have subcommittees, they have blue ribbon commissions. So there's a lot of different ways in which you still need to manually collect data. I would think that at a certain point, being able to, to use larger data aggregators, that is something you should consider, but it shouldn't be at the exclusion of manually collecting all your data. And as Al has already put up there, Excel spreadsheet. It is the unhidden, or it's the secret champion of being a data scientist or being even a social scientist. It is a great vehicle for collecting data. So I'm going through, I am finding, a website, or I'm finding a document. Click on the URL, cut and paste, I drop it in here. I then, here being an Excel spreadsheet, I now know that in order to kind of access, or to fast forward to utilize it later on, you need to have some cohesive data. You need to identify it, and you need to, based on whatever your questions may be, you're going to need to start tagging and having your columns identified so you can have consistency of data. Because as you're cleaning data, these are just columns and rows, but it's an opportunity now to cognitively re-engage. What are the influences? What are those questions that you had at the very beginning of your process? You can now start to engage it in an Excel spreadsheet, and you can start having these questions. All right, I got it all now. Well, what are the influences? Because the Excel spreadsheet isn't going to give you those answers, but it will help you start asking questions or reaffirm those questions you had at the very beginning. And as Al may have referenced, Act 173 as a funding tool, um, for me, I had these questions, which people were influential in creating Act 173? As a social scientist, you're going to delve into theory. And I'm a big fan of Kingdon and his multiple stream theory. So I wanted to be able to kind of convert that theory into something tangible. Who or where were those influences coming from? Was it from academia? Were there some legislators? Were there this hidden entity out in the grass? Wasn't certain. So I was curious about that. Back in the day, Allison and I participated in a Stanford research project based on crowdfunding. And there I came up with, or I became fascinated with the notion of idea contagion. So I want to know, ideas, how would they flow through the matrix, both longitudinally or from node to node? And so the opportunity or the ability to see idea contagion and to actually visualize it, the potential to see that really got me super excited. Um, and then, not the final piece, just because it happened to be the third, but where there are peoples of influence, where are there organizations of influence? We talked earlier about how there's large policy organizations and they have committees and subcommittees. They have blue ribbon commissions. The idea is how granular you can get within a large policy organization to get some of the nuance, to get some of the minutia. So I chose these three concepts. And as you can see, people, ideas, and organization, those are the nouns that are going to have a profound impact when we start making that transition from the analog into the digital. People, idea, and organization, those are going to be the nouns, those are going to be the nodes moving forward for our knowledge graph. They're going to be kind of, well, I don't want to give away the secret, but as we go further on down, you'll begin to see and translate now some of those columns and those rows in an Excel spreadsheet. You'll start seeing visual acuity. Influence, perpetuate, calculate. These are the patterns, the processes, the rhythms. I use routines. You'll begin to see the connection between people, ideas, and organizations. And you'll begin to now see what was on a wall or in a Wikipedia. It's going to help you become much more tangible. Visual acuity is a very real thing in a knowledge graph. So as you take your journey and you transition from the wall or the wiki into knowledge graphing, it's critical to have, well, a model. It needs to have a little bit of structure. And as you can see, I have a smaller screen, so you may not be able to see it, but the documents, the organization, and the people, they're at the corner. Those are where I want the connections to be made. But I wanted to know a little bit more. If you're going to talk about idea contagion, you need to have a year. You need to have that longitudinal awareness. If you have a large organization, you need to have suborgs. Again, you need to be able to address committees and smaller iterations within a larger policy organization. And so I also wanted to have an opportunity for sources. Is there a common core, a common source that influenced all these ideas and decisions? So as you can see, modeling starts the translation of your Excel spreadsheet now into knowledge graphing. It gives you now maybe a roadmap, but it gives you now a little bit of the secret sauce for when you start generating output.
So, Trygve, I have a quick question for you before we move
Yes.
on. Coming from social science and not coming from, say, a database or a data structure background,
Yeah.
how big a jump was this for you, or did this seem pretty logical? Like, where were you on the spectrum when you started looking and creating your first data model?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was in many ways, it was intimidating. But that was just me. The intimidation kind of peeled away. I reflect back, like, why was I intimidated? Because essentially, the things that you're doing, the data collection, the data cleanliness, the thinking about, the modeling, you're doing all that. It's just now you're conceptualizing it a little differently. So instead of on a one-dimensional wall, I was doing it in 3D. you know I was doing it in a using different pieces, so it was like an artist moving from painting to being a sculptor. Like, you still have the artistic style, you just have a different medium. So it just took me a little while to become a little more dexterous with it. Maybe that's a word, maybe it's not. If not, it should be. To be able to now start converting my mental model into this form of data modeling. And experimentation really was the key, because I realized how clean the data needed to be. But also, if I didn't make the right connections, that's fine. I can always go back. You can always
Mm,
reconnect. You can always, like, okay, this association was wrong. It needs to align here instead. So
yeah.
what I liked about the output are great, but they're not permanent. There's enough versatility there that you can experiment. And
Yeah.
I
I mean,
spent a
one
fair
of the
amount of
things,
time with that.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but one of the things that really struck me when you did this, like as someone who witnessed it happening, is that this model like reflected the way you were already thinking about it, right? You were thinking about which people and which organizations were connected to what and which document led to the next. So, you
Yeah.
know, for me, it seemed like it was almost more a reflection of how you were sort of ideating the problem in the first place.
Yeah. I was surprised ultimately that the outcome was like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's just the way I do things. And I think, not everyone has the benefit of being married to a data scientist, but the Neo4j community was sandboxing, and the Graph Academy. It's a very gracious community that is very comfortable with novice technologists or novice learners. So for those that aren't married to a data scientist, I highly recommend going down that journey. It is safe harbor. And so, not to get distracted too much, let's hop back into it. So, when we're this was for some, this will be your aha moment. For me now, this was the realization that I could actually do this. And the way it works is, if you see in yellow, and again, my screen is a little on the small side, but if you notice all those are all the titles. This is my CSV file. It's like, wow, it's all right there. And so that's all the hard work, all the cleaning, everything. You drop it in there. And now, if you notice what's in blue, that was kind of the data model that we've been thinking about. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, what's next? And then again, I thought there was going to be far more. No, it's now merely aligning your CSV file, okay, with your data model, and wanting to have the relationship now between the nodes and your content.
I'm
I
gonna
I
pipe
don't
in here
I
just
don't
because.
want to oversimplify. I don't want to oversimplify, but it was really, I thought it was going to be far more complex, but Al was like, no, no, you got this.
Yeah.
And so this was the area now where you can realize, okay, wait a minute, that alignment doesn't work. This is where you can kind of make your mistakes. But this is also where you also have the validation. Like, for me, it was like, wait a minute, I got this. so
Yeah.
so
I mean,
So this is
so again, as someone who witnessed what Trygve was going through, the fact that there was no code involved, that you can actually use a GUI to take your social science CSV files and directly put them into a knowledge graph. And you're literally, all you're doing in this lower right-hand corner is saying, make this column go into this node or into this relationship. I mean, the first time you actually hit the run import button, it was really funny. You're just like, oh, that's it. I was like, yeah, you're good. So,
yeah.
but that's what I
My
think is so
anxiety
great
was way out of proportion.
about
Uh, and so if you go to the next slide, this for me was the aha moment. Okay. I'm a bit, I like the concept of visual acuity, but what this is we had 400 plus documents that are captured in here. Now you can see on the screen. And now, if this was real time, and if you like, you want to connect afterwards or another time, we can actually show you how you can screen in, how you can screen out. But what you can see here is the values, the alignment of all of these nodes. And we're starting to now see where influence was. It's easier now than it ever was to see patterns. One of the challenges when you do it on a wall is you're almost self-validating. You're looking for something and you're gonna find it, and your the cognitive boundaries or cognitive processing is, he who goes in search of demons is gonna find demons. He who goes in search of a solution is gonna find it. What we had here now is the opportunity of seeing what was in the tall grass. I could begin to see connections and influences that maybe I didn't anticipate,
it.
or that you could not have anticipated doing it one dimensionally. And so, what you have here is that we were able to identify two documents. The one on the top, as you can see, it's a little bit larger, so it has a little more influence. The one on the bottom, while it is a little less smaller, is not as influential. It is still impactful. Uh, and you begin to see now that there are these two documents that were managing the agenda. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And that strikes to a variety of different theoretical constructs, but it's also, there's a very practical matter you can take to it. But I think it is, for me, this was the aha moment that that we were able to realize, oh, there's these two folks that are managing the agenda of all the hundreds and hundreds of documents. It came down to these two.
Yeah.
Boom. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I know there's a question in the chat where people are asking about which tools we're using. These screenshots came directly from Workspace, which is a combination of the data importer that you saw, the query or like browser is something you might have used before, as well as Bloom. And so, using to match the spreadsheet column to the nodes, that's actually something called data importer. Alex, if we can probably get a link for that as well. So in Workspace, you have all three. You have the importer, you have Bloom, and you have Cipher Query that you can run as well. And we can get you a link for that as well. And this actually, like, shockingly, is just the GDS, like the graph data science, that's actually in Bloom. So the way this worked is Trygve had pulled up. Do you mind if I tell this story? I get very excited about data science. I can't help myself.
There you go.
So when you're in Bloom, you can actually show, like in our case, we were showing the documents that were related to different topics and related to each other. And we just ran betweenness centrality. So like which of the, and it's a particular algorithm. If you have questions about that algorithm, you can ask either Trygve or myself. And that was one of the ways that we were checking influence, meaning, which documents were the most connected across pathways. And you don't need to know any code for that either. You can go right into Bloom, and on the left-hand side, there's a little, GDS algorithm that you can click on it, and it will actually run this for you. And then these got saved. So, I mean, Trygve was doing data science, and he didn't have to code anything, and I was like, yay! It was very exciting for me. So that's the thing that I think is, which was fun for me to watch with you, and you can tell me yourself, is being able to see folks who have these really important research agendas and finding ways that you can use this technology to accomplish things that historically you needed, some master's or PhD student to help you with. Does that sound about right? Does that sound
Yeah,
fair, Trygve?
yeah. I mean, I think, again, you're still going to put the time and effort in, but you have now this isn't a magic wand, but what it is, it's a great tool to help you kind of have that aha moment, expand the boundaries of your cognition. Because as we were going down this road looking at influence, this isn't what I expected to find. And so instead, it allows you to have kind of an open-ended approach to finding things, validating, and these are the two documents that we ended up aligning with, what we call the PICAS report and the DMG report, and they refer to two different styles of financing. One is census-based, and the other is a tiered approach. So I think as we get deeper and deeper and continue to do the research, I'm going to be very excited to see now the next layer is, okay, where is the influence that influence these particular documents, right? And so I think there is a multitude of different research steps, but what I think, if Al may have mentioned at the very get-go, is that while we were looking at influences, I think this is an opportunity to create new pathways for access. This is a way for individuals that are affected, for people to now lean into technology to realize the possible, be it generative AI, using large language models, continuing to expand of the dimensionality of these knowledge graphs. I think there is plenty of opportunity to make complexity and make the complex far more accessible. I think it's seen as a badge of honor, and it is in many ways a barrier of entry. It's like, but I think this is a real kind of narrative where people talk about democratizing data. I think we've just shown right now how you totally can do that, and make it accessible and open up dialogue, open up some narratives there. Allison and I, we live in Vermont, and it's a citizen legislative body, and I think this is an opportunity to create some tools for our legislators to maybe not be as reliant on experts, maybe not be as reliant on people who have an interest or agenda outside of the population. I think there's an opportunity to expand outside of education, or expand. We're in a very specialized node within special education. I think you can now go to education writ large, et cetera, et cetera. I think as a case study, I think the opportunities to deploy these solutions, both on the academic, both on the policy side, it's limitless. It is, you are no longer shaped by anything. You don't need to have a credential. You don't need to have a bunch of graduate students. You can really be an independent researcher. You can satisfy your own curiosity with some really robust technical tools without having to be a robust technologist. So that's kind of what I'll leave you with. Like, embrace the possible, folks. If you would love to chat some more about this, or actually go through it real time, talk about idea contagion, you just want to geek out, drop me a line. Love to chat about this stuff. I am very much a convert when it comes to embracing technology, knowledge graphs, Neo4j. I'm a total fan. It has really opened up the possible for me, and I'd very much like, if you're so inclined, help you do the same thing.
So we do have a few questions in the chat, Trygve. The first one is your name only says T. So what is
I
I'm
was in a
showing
rush
your
to
full
get
name
here. I'm
now.
sorry.
But can you oh, that's right. We had some technical difficulties at the beginning. But if you can tell people just once again, because you didn't get to introduce yourself as much,
Yeah.
who you are, what you do.
So I'm Trygve, and most people call me T because Trygve is not always digestible. I am the head of research for a small consultancy called explainit.ai, and as you may have gotten the gist from our conversation, we focus mostly on state level public policy, and right now this particular project is in the education space. So I am a concerned father. I'm a policy geek. I attended the New School, so I started my graduate journey there in the realm of historical studies. And since, because of technical tools and the nature of my journey, I'm a policy wonk, I'm a policy geek, and a concerned citizen.
We have a couple of technical questions as well. There's a question about how did you handle entity resolution for human names? And we actually did run across this where it had, it would be a person's first initial and a last name, and then it would be the full name. And the honest answer is we're lucky enough that we had a really small data set. And so that was pretty manual. As the data set continues to grow within Neo4j, we have lots of different ways that you can actually do entity resolution. So that's another use case. If you have questions on that, you can reach out to me at Neo4j. And there was a question about using Workspace with local desktop. You actually can use Workspace with your local desktop. You're going to connect through the Bolt. And if you have questions on that, again, you can reach out to me on that anytime. So you can use Workspace with desktop as well as with Aura. For those of you who want to try it out, I know, Trygve, you started out in Sandbox first, right?
That is correct, yeah.
But we do have a free instance, an Aura free instance that for most of what folks are using, like in these smaller data sets, is more than enough for what you'll need there. Let me see. Any other questions that we had? Graph Academy, excellent. Does
Allison?
Anybody have any other questions while we're here?
Allison, quickly, just
No. Okay. All right. So Trygve, I have a question for you, which is when you think about what do you think in the realm of government and public service, what do you think is one of the biggest opportunities that knowledge graphs can provide, or people that you might want to encourage to give it a go? Who might you like want to inspire today?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two answers to that question. One, I think policymakers themselves, as I referenced, excuse me, we're in a citizen-run legislative environment, and these are folks that are professionals in something other than politics. And I think giving them an opportunity to process and visualize tremendous amounts of data only allows them to do their job better. But I think there's also a bottom-up component. I think, being an active citizen or just wanting services, being able to have easier pathways of connection, to have greater access to the full range of data, I think that's a good thought. I think that's a good pathway where by creating access for both politicians and the people, now you're starting to get maybe into LLMs where you can create these better pathways of communication from top to bottom to top. Right now, I think we get a lot of guidance from the government. This would be an opportunity now for the people, I think, to start pushing things up and start maybe being heard. Now, I don't want to hop too much on a soapbox, but from a data perspective, I think just greater access, we can start realizing what the promise of open government was from a transparency perspective. And I think leaving it at that, I think that opens it up to a lot of coffee conversation. I think, our morning coffees can certainly be occupied by it, but I think it's an opportunity for those on that are on this this call to go out and realize, hey, we have options, we have tools, there are things we can do.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this in our pre call where we talked about this is relevant for so many usage scenarios. In if you are in history or in other social fields, geography, wherever else, human anthroposophy kind of like studies where you look into these matters, and even if you have this your example showed us as well, if you have a small data set, it's still relevant, it still gives you an insights, still gives you some way of working with that data. So I think it's don't be shy if you think, oh, this is not big enough. Just give it a shot, give it a try. As you saw, there's a relatively easy way of getting your data in and start exploring.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know Mark has a question
Oh,
in the
yes.
chat as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, hi Mark. So Mark says, as a digital humanist in higher education, attended a couple of Neo4j workshops in 2017 and interested in portfolios for lifetime learners. I'm not quite sure what you mean with portfolios by lifetime learners. I would say if you want to learn and we want to spread the message, I think Graph Academy is probably a step to look into, where we constantly update our courses from beginners, very beginner friendly courses, to more advanced sessions. I think that could be something there too.
Or drop me a line, Mark. We can rub some heads together. I know people. We know people. We can make some things happen for you.
He knows somebody in data science and Neo4j that might be able to help you
do.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ken, I agree. I
Excellent.
think the data information. We are in the information age, and there's a lot of doom and gloom. There is a lot of the Skynet mentality, but I think these are just tools to help us do our jobs better, to help satisfy our curiosity. And I think the work that Alex and Allison are doing, you know, help help us overcome some of those boundaries. That help us overcome some of the hurdles, because society is, again, they want things to be complex. The more complex it is, the more valuable it is. Well, I can safely say that if you lean into the notion of demythifying complexity, utilizing Neo4j tools, utilizing knowledge graphs, marrying technology to your social mindset is the way to go. I think that's where the cool factor is going to be, moving forward in this technological age. Again, that's me on my soapbox. I promised I wouldn't be on one, so
That's
I will
good.
step off.
That's why you're here, so that you can share your soapbox. That's why we invited you, right?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks for having me. I'm sorry I was only here for a certain period of time, but hopefully next time if you guys have me back, we can talk about access and we can talk about other dimensions of this, or at least give an update on where we are in a certain period of time. I'll make sure I bring better technology with me.
No worries. I'm glad it worked out in the end. I'm happy that you were here and to share your insights and your experiences with us. I think this was very helpful, very interesting. Thank you all for watching. I have just briefly, before I let you all go, a couple of things I would like to say. We are running a couple of workshops coming up in next month. So if you are interested in joining more insights workshops, get a little bit more hands-on stuff, join our training series in March, from intro to Gen AI, RAG applications to geospatial data. So if that's interesting to you, then check that out. Also, we're partnering with O'Reilly Learning. They're offering 2 knowledge graph and large language models boot camps. I think these are 2 consecutive sessions on the 11th and on the 18th of March. If you want to join that, use this link, or the link I'll post in chat right now, or use the code that is written there that gives you 30 days free access to all of O'Reilly Learning, but specifically to these 2 sessions, obviously. And you can check it out. And next session is next Tuesday on the 27th of February, where I have Kinevis visualization platform joining us for a session on unlocking the potential of LLMs and knowledge graphs through visualization. So that should be another interesting session coming up.
Hey, just want to reach out to Giza. I see you have reach on out to me. We can actually just go through it one step by step, and we'll transactionally share the data. You can see it, and we can geek out together. So just ping me. Again, anyone wants us to transactionally share the data, and we can talk about specifics, both to help and to explain even further. Hey, drop me a line. We're here to share.
Cool. Maybe that could become a blog post at some point, and then we can share it publicly.
Yeah, for sure.
With everybody. I can obviously when it's ready, I can put it in the video description, or I'll share it obviously in other means. So that could be something as a follow up, or we do something in this stage again and give some hands on how to guide how to from CSV to knowledge graph together with you guys.
Yeah, we'll do that without a net.
Yeah.
We'll do it live, people.
All right.
No illusions here.
Cool.
All right. Well, Allison, thank you so much for the time. Thank you everyone for stopping by. Like I said, if you all need anything, just reach on out to any of the trio. And I said I'd certainly love to geek out a little bit and talk some more if need be.
Cool. Thank you very much, Trygve. Thank you very much, Allison. Have a good rest of your day, rest of your week, everybody, and see you soon at another of these live streams. Thank you very much. Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.